Have you ever been rejected? Right? You most likely have at some point in some way, and it doesn't feel very good. And so I want to talk today about rejection and how that ties in with how God sees us and how God treats us. So we'll see in just a minute. Well, welcome back. My name is Daniel Bennett. It's great to have you join us. And our free giveaway, you may know already, but it is Goodwill Toward Men, a free booklet by Andrew. And this is an introduction to his whole series on The War is Over, which I also highly recommend. But if you'd like to check this out, you can get it for free if you go to charisdailygtn.com. And so I encourage you to go to charisdailygtn.com and get this little booklet. There's also many other booklets that Andrew has, some by my dad, Barry Bennett. Also, there's other booklets and resources. And of course, we have many resources, free resources on the website, books, CDs, all kinds of stuff that we have. But yeah, if you want any of that kind of stuff, you can call 719-635-1111. Also, that's our prayer line. That's also, for any resources, if you want to donate, if you want to partner, anything like that. And so I do encourage you to connect with us, because the whole reason why we're doing this is to bless people. And so it's great to find out if someone's receiving from something, somebody's enjoying it. But yeah, so Goodwill Toward Men. Yeah, this is great because, it changes everything. When you know the war's over and what the situation that we're in, the new covenant that we're in, what Jesus accomplished on the cross, this is so important. I was just talking to somebody recently who was so incredibly concerned about spiritual warfare and what about this and what about demons doing this and all this other kind of stuff. And it's like, wait a minute. We don't have to live like that anymore. We don't have to live in fear about what the devil's doing. We can just focus on what God has done and live in victory and peace and joy and just live as overcomers. But it takes revelation of the truth to do that. And so I highly recommend it. And today when I talk about, in the theme of God's love, I want to talk about rejection. And specifically, I want to talk about how God did not design us for rejection. Right? There's a reason why rejection feels terrible. Now, we can harden our hearts, and over years we can get to where rejection doesn't bother us. But really, rejection does not feel good. And we weren't designed to experience it. I want to talk about this a bit more and what God has done about it. So, what kind of sparked this was thinking about Song of Solomon. And the book, I used to teach Song of Solomon here. I used to teach some of the Old Testament courses here. And so I want to start off with Song of Solomon. We'll go a lot of other places also. But when you study the book of Song of Solomon, right, there's a few different ways to approach it. You can see it as the love between a husband and a wife. You can also see it you could also read it as a metaphor, analogy of God's relationship with Israel or Christ's relationship with the church. But either way, regardless of how you want to approach it, it shows that love and romance are something that were invented by God. Right? He puts this lovey-dovey book in there, romance, where it's almost to the point of like cheesy, where it's a little bit even awkward to read sometimes. Because you know how like when you're in love, you act all goofy and you're like, oh, I want to sit next to you at the restaurant instead of across from you. And you start talking in silly voices or doing silly things. And everyone around you is like, oh my goodness, you're ridiculous. This is embarrassing just to watch. And when it's not you, it looks embarrassing. But when it is you, you're like, I don't care. I'm on cloud nine because I'm in love. Right? And you see people act totally ridiculous. And you realize God's actually the one who invented that. God put this romantic, lovey-dovey, two people crazy about each other book in the Bible, where it's like, your teeth are like sheep, which I'm assuming that means they're white. I don't know. Your teeth, right? And it's actually kind of funny because different cultural stuff. And so, but it just even stuff just like complimenting each other and just seeing how he's like, you're so beautiful and your hair is like this and all that. And she's like, well, you're so handsome and all. And you're like, this doesn't sound spiritual. That's the thing, though. It is. God's the one who invented romance. That's the thing. The devil can't invent anything. He just corrupts things that God made. God's the one who invented romance. He's the one who invented beauty. He's the one who invented friendship. He invented intimacy. He invented adrenaline. He invented butterflies in your stomach when you think about somebody that you have a crush on. He invented all these things, and there's a good version of all these things. The enemy just tries to throw death into it and stuff like that. And try to corrupt it. And so sometimes we say like that can't be godly because look how harmful this stuff is or how stupid this stuff is. No, there's a good version that God invented. He wants us to experience these things. And whether it's Christ in the church or God in Israel or just us, like husband and wife relationship, these are good things. So I'm not going to study the whole book right now, but I want to look at Song of Solomon chapter 8, verse 4. And so this is one of the things that sparked this. It says, I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, do not stir up or awaken love until it pleases. Right? So do not stir up or awaken love until it pleases. And there's a lot in this. What I want to focus on specifically, though, is that one of the reasons why it's not good to awaken love before the right time is because if you awaken love and emotions before the right time, there's a risk that we will get shot down. Right? There's not the safety. If we pour our hearts out to somebody before we know if they're going to reject us or not, we can get hurt. And so, again, that's kind of my topic for this message, is that we were not designed for rejection. Right? See, God never intended for us to experience rejection. He never would have rejected us. He never has rejected us. Right? In the garden even, God didn't reject Adam and Eve. They rejected him. And then he had to protect them by kicking them out of the garden, but it wasn't because he's protecting them. Again, I can't go into a full study right now. But see, in a perfect world with no sin, no one would ever experience rejection. This is not an emotion that we were supposed to have. For all eternity, once we're done with this world and in the next, we're never going to experience rejection again. There's a reason it hurts. There's a reason why it's so overwhelming and feels so terrible, is because we weren't designed to ever have to process this. It makes no sense, right? There's this type of pain we can feel that we can't put into words because we were never meant to feel this kind of stuff. Where it's like, yeah, it feels bad because it is bad. God never wanted us to go through these things, right? I've seen videos online where people do these experiments with kids where like a mother just doesn't have any facial expressions, and the baby tries to interact with the mother, and the mother just rejects all interaction. And the baby starts to freak out and stuff. And I'm like, what kind of sicko does an experiment like this with their own child? That's a separate topic. But you just see like, yeah, of course the baby hates being rejected because the baby's expecting, if I interact with you, that you'll acknowledge me and the whole deal. And so we were designed for relationship. We were designed for closeness, for acceptance, for having relationships with no fear. But sin messed up all that stuff, right? When Adam and Eve fell and brought sin into this world, then it brought in a whole level, all kinds of pain that we were never meant to experience. And so again, we can numb our hearts to rejection, but that's not God's best. And so many people might say, it's not a big deal, who cares? And we try to get over it. But if we're honest with ourselves, it's not our best just to say, I don't care about being rejected, it doesn't bother me anymore. Maybe a stronger person. That's not God's best. God's best is for us to actually have sensitive hearts that are constantly healed by him, instead of just saying like, my heart doesn't feel anything anymore because I'm afraid to love, I'm afraid to, because again, if you get so numb to reject, you harden your heart so much because of rejection to other people, it's very easy to take that same approach toward God and have a very difficult time having closeness with God because we've intentionally tried to harden our hearts as a defense mechanism when that wasn't what God intended for us. But that doesn't mean that it's not painful. That's the whole point. It's a level of pain and a type of pain that we can't process. We weren't designed to process. It's kind of like if you eat something that's not food, and your body's like, I don't know how to digest this. This isn't food. That's what rejection is. It's like, I don't know how to process this because I was never designed to consume this, to experience this. And so, and sin has made a huge mess in this world. Our culture can really encourage a rejection culture, right? Like if you think about dating, and when people say, I'm just going to date a whole bunch of people, what are you doing? It's kind of like, I'm going to get close with this person until one of us rejects the other. Then I'll get close with somebody else until one of us rejects the other. Then I'll get close with somebody else until one of us rejects the other. And it's just rejection, 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 rejection. Either we're rejecting or they're rejecting. And it does a number on our hearts where we weren't designed to be able to do that kind of stuff, where you just constantly get closer than you should, rejection, closer than you should, rejection. Even social media, right? This level of anonymity where people can be so mean to each other online, right? If you're watching this on YouTube, I wonder, there might even be mean comments in this video. I don't know. No one would ever say anything mean to me, I'm sure. I'm just kidding. But people can be so mean. And so it's kind of like, well, if you do anything online, you have to just harden your heart because people are going to say mean things, right? You see on social media, people get into arguments and debates and call each other names and are jerks to each other, stuff you'd never say to somebody in person. And so there's this level of, I'm going to be mean to you because I don't care because you're just this anonymous person online. And then we say, well, as a defense mechanism, I'm just going to harden my heart and not care anymore because you're rejecting me. And again, so these things can be very very unhealthy. And it's not just rejection in the sense of like, I don't like you. That's a very valid form. That's a pain. That's still a very valid form of pain. But God, we weren't designed for rejection. We also weren't designed for loss, right? God never wanted us to experience the loss of a loved one, whether that's loss through rejection, right? Or an argument. If two people argue and they fall out and never talk again, things like that. But also, right, death. There's a reason why when someone dies, we're like, I can't even process this pain. Because we weren't designed to process that kind of pain. God never, these are terrible things that God never designed for us to experience death and be okay with it. It is something where we don't have the necessary tools to fully process this. It has to be Him doing it for us. It has to be Him processing these things for us. So again, it can be overwhelming, and there is no easy way to get over it because we weren't ever supposed to. Again, if God wanted us to process something normally, He would have designed us to do it, but He didn't because He doesn't want us to have to do these things. So again, the beauty in this is that God's saying, I didn't make you able to do this, but I'll do it for you, right? So 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 6 through 8 says, therefore humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that He may exalt you in due time, casting all your care upon Him, for He cares for you. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Right, so a few things I want to point out here. First of all, it's pride to try to handle your own cares without God. Saying, humble yourself by casting your cares on Jesus. It's a sign of, you see, somebody say, I don't want to bother God, I'll just deal with this myself. That's pride. He's saying, no, I need to do this for you. Humbly give me your problems, give me your worries, give me your pain, give me your cares. This is a sign of humility. He wants us to, right? Cast your cares on Him. He cares for you. He wants to carry this for you. He wants to process this for you because you can't. Again, you see this all the time. It's whether it's rejection, and again, it can be silly stuff, right? It could be, you see 2 3-year-olds and one of them says something mean to the other, and then like they're brokenhearted, right? They're devastated that someone was mean to them. And we might say that's not a big deal. It is though, because they just felt rejection and it didn't feel good, right? We're emotional, spiritual, physical beings, and this is just a real thing where it doesn't feel good to be rejected because God never intended us to feel those feelings, to experience that. And so, again, it's humility to cast your cares upon Him. It's not just like, I don't want to waste God's time, and I'll go to God for the big stuff. The little stuff I'll handle on my own. Give everything to God. Practice with the little stuff so that when the big stuff comes, you know how to throw things at Him. Say, this is your problem, not mine, right? And it says the enemy's prowling around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. So again, if you try to carry your own cares, if you try to handle things on your own, you're making yourself a target because you're weighing yourself down. Instead of being lighthearted and walking in freedom and joy and saying, I'm weightless in this world and He carries the burden for me, we're saying, I'm going to carry all this in my own strength, and the enemy is like, you're easy pickings now. I'm going to go after you and try to devour you. So, another point here, Luke 4, verse 18. Luke 4:18 says, the Spirit, this is Jesus reading from Isaiah, but the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because He has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed. And it goes on. But again, we know this scripture, but I always just kind of skimmed past this brokenhearted part. But He says, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He sent me to heal the brokenhearted. And that really got my attention. Because again, sometimes we think He came to heal the sick and for us to be saved. But I was like, brokenhearted, I didn't think that was a real thing. I thought, if it's your emotions, if it's your heart that's brokenhearted, you just need to get over it, right? You can think your way into not being brokenhearted anymore. Just logically, stop worrying about it. Get over it. We try and find techniques, or whatever else. But here we see, He came to heal the brokenhearted. Brokenheartedness is a real thing. And if we just try to get over it and just pretend it's not there, that's not actually humility. He didn't say, humble yourself and accept the fact that your emotions don't matter. He said, no, cast your cares on me. This is a real thing, and you need to give it to me so I can heal you. I came to heal the brokenhearted. Brokenheartedness is a real thing. There's levels of pain where it's like, I can't just think my way through this. I need Jesus. I need a touch from God to be set free from this, because again, there's levels of pain we can experience in this world that we were not designed to experience. And it's not just like, it's not a big deal. Just stop worrying about it. Stop thinking about it. No, you need to be healed, right? It's kind of like if somebody chops off your leg and people are just like, just pretend it didn't happen. Well, no, I need to be healed. There's something missing right now. Now, I'm not talking about being a victim. I'm saying, no, the whole point is he wants to heal you. He wants to set you free. He can heal you. And it doesn't even have to make sense to you. All right? There's a peace that passes understanding where it's like, I don't know how you healed my broken heart because this thing happened that really hurt me, but you did. My heart's okay. And so we could talk about that one for a long time, but I'll move on here. Again, sometimes God told me a long time ago, treat your heart the same way you treat your body. The same way you stand in faith for healing for your body, the same way you believe me, my promises for healing for your physical body, do the same with your heart, right? As he is, so are we in this world. I want my body to be fully whole. I want my heart to be fully whole. So he's like, have the same level of confidence and conviction and passion about emotional healing as you are about physical healing. So again, Jesus wants to heal the brokenhearted just as much as he wants to do everything else. He wants to set us free from shame and condemnation and all kinds of things. He cares about your heart just as much. And he loves us so much. I mean, the most famous verse ever, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. Right? We know this so much, but if we don't want to get numb to this and forget how powerful this is. I mean, he loves us so much, he gave his only begotten son. And, I always was like, that's really cool. But then when you have your own kids, you're like, oh man, that's mind blowing, because I would never do that. I'd never give up one of my kids. And he gave his son because he loves us so much. It's absolutely amazing. See, God doesn't want us to perish. He doesn't want us to have eternity without him. He cares about us. God isn't the one sending people to hell. That's one of the biggest lies ever. Is like, well, if God's good, why would he send people to hell? No, he's literally the one trying to save us from hell. See, Adam is the one who chose hell for humanity. He set us on a path to hell by submitting to the devil. Then he chose the devil's destiny, right? If we say, I'm my own God, then I'm going to spend eternity being my own God, which means that I am apart from God. And so God's the one trying to save us from hell, from where we got sent, which is why he sent, right? Again, it never says, for God so didn't like us that he tried to send us all to hell. No, it's the opposite. We were already going to hell because of what happened in the garden. And God he paid the ultimate price. He made the ultimate, most painful sacrifice we could never imagine. We will never be able to comprehend the price he paid, because he cares so much about saving us. Right? See, we know that Jesus died for our sins. We know he took the curse upon himself. Right? We know by his stripes we were healed. He took on his physical body, the physical pain. He took our sickness upon himself so we could be free from it. But the other thing is that he also took rejection for us. See, when he was on the cross, the Father had to reject him so that he could accept us. So that's part of the price Jesus paid. He took all the bad stuff that we deserved so that we could get all the good things that he deserved, right? Mark 15, verse 34. Mark 15:34 says, and at the 9th hour, Jesus cried out with a loud voice saying, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which is translated, my God, why have you forsaken me? I think that's the saddest verse in the entire Bible, is that Jesus, we'll never really understand this as much as it happened. Jesus, the Son, the Word, and the Father in perfect unity for all eternity, and having to be rejected by the Father on the cross. See, when we hear about Jesus, actually I'll go ahead and read this, but when we hear about Jesus like dreading going to the cross, I don't believe it was so much, the physical pain I'm sure was part of it. But we always say it's because, the physical pain. I think the reason why he did not want to do this so much was because he's like the emotional pain of being rejected by his Father, who he'd never been separate from ever in all eternity. Right? So look at Luke 22, verse 42. Luke 22:42 says, Jesus is praying, Father, if it is your will, take this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. Then an angel appeared to him from heaven, strengthening him. And being in agony, he prayed more earnestly. Then his sweat became like great drops of blood falling down to the ground. Right? He did not want to go through this experience. And again, I believe it's primarily because he knew that he would have to become sin for us, and the Father had to turn his back because God can have no part with sin. And so Jesus had to become sin and sickness and death and pay the price for us. And in that included being rejected by the Father so that we could be accepted by the Father. It's amazing. We'll never have to be rejected by the Father because Jesus took that on himself. And now the reason Jesus was willing to do that is Hebrews 12 verse 2, right? Looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross. Right? He endured the cross for the joy set before him, but it says despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Right? So he despised the shame. He despised, right, the rejection. Despised the whole process of what it took. But he, and really made little of it. He's like, I'm going to do that anyway because of the joy set before me. I'm willing to pay this price even though I don't like it. But I'm not going to make that more important to me than the joy set before me. So again, God loves us so much that he paid this incredible price that we can't comprehend for us because he wanted to accept us. He does not want to reject us. He wants us to be free from this rejection that we imposed on ourselves and we've opened ourselves up to. We see John 15 verse 13 says, greater love, this is Jesus talking, greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends. And that's the greatest form of love there is to lay down your life for your friends, and that's exactly what Jesus did for us. It's amazing. There's no greater love than the love that Jesus has for us. Because again, he said this before he went to the cross, but he's setting us up like, hey, just so you know, the greatest love that exists is to lay down your life for others. That doesn't just mean dying. That also means living, like laying down your life for somebody else. And then he went and did exactly that for us, which is amazing. So what does this mean, right? If God's not rejecting us, it isn't just this emotional thing. There's different ways of saying like we're accepted, we're not rejected. Excuse me. So Romans 8 verse 32 says, he who did not spare his own son, but delivered him up for us all, how shall he not with him also freely give us all things? There is a level of balance to this because God's never going to reject us because he loves us, but sometimes he will withhold things from us to protect us. Not his promises, but related to our calling. There's certain things we're not ready for yet, right? If my child asks to drive the car, my oldest is 7, but if one of my kids asks to drive my car, I'd be like, no, not because I'm rejecting you, but because I love you so much. So I'm going to withhold this, even though someday, yes, I will let you drive my car. You're not ready for it yet. Right? So Galatians 4 verse 1 says, now I say that the heir, as long as he's a child, does not differ at all from a slave, though he is master of all. Right? So again, when you're a child, when we're immature, there's certain things that God will say, I'm not going to let you do this yet. I'm not going to elevate you into this position yet because you're not ready for it. But that's not rejection. And so again, he's like, I fully accept you, but there's a growth process. And so it's a combination. I fully accept you, but I don't fully give you everything that you want when you want it because you need to be ready for it. Again, I'm not talking about promises. I'm not talking about God's love, healing, provision, any of that kind of stuff. I'm not talking any of that. I'm talking more about your influence in your calling and how you impact other people. All right, another example here, 1 Timothy 3 verse 1 says, this is a faithful saying, if a man desires the position of a bishop, he desires a good work. A bishop must then be blameless, the husband of one wife, temperate, sober-minded, of good behavior, hospitable, able to teach, etc. It goes on. He's saying this is a good thing if you want this. Oh, and by the way, some of you can't do this. Right? He's saying if you want this, you need to be like this. And what's the implication? If you don't meet this criteria, you don't get to do this job. But he's not saying I'm rejecting you. He's saying I'm protecting you because if you don't meet this criteria, this job could actually harm you. It could harm others. So saying, oh no, I'm not rejecting you. I'm just saying you're not ready for it yet. But when you are ready for it, then that's fantastic, right? And so, again, you could go on and on with examples like this. Another one is James 3 verse 1. It says, my brethren, let not many of you become teachers, knowing that we shall receive a stricter judgment. And so again, this is talking about calling and purpose. This is, things that we do, not about things we receive and that God's blessing us with. He's saying, I don't want you to automatically become a teacher. If you're not ready for it, it could actually do more harm than good. So don't just rush into being a teacher. Don't rush into being a minister and trying to tell others things and share things. Because if you're not ready for it, it could actually harm you. It raises you to a higher level of criticism from others. It could harm you. It could affect your ego. You see other things in like Timothy. And here also it's like, we'll receive a stricter judgment. God's going to hold us to a higher standard because saying you're sharing with other people, you're affecting other people. So again, those things are only to protect us. You even see the same thing with Jesus in Luke 2, verse 52. It says, Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man, or God and men. I see God loved Jesus completely, but he didn't launch Jesus into ministry until it was the right time. So same with us. So I'm saying God doesn't reject us, but sometimes we might feel like we're being rejected because God isn't promoting us the way we want to. It's like, no, look, he fully accepts us, but he loves us so much that he wants us to grow and mature and be ready for it so that we can handle it when he launches us into different things. And so, again, sometimes there's this lie that we might feel rejected because we don't have the job or the role or the calling or whatever it is, the influence that what we know in our heart we're called to. It's kind of like King David. When he was anointed to be king, if he had said, well, I want to be king today, and why isn't God making me king today? What's going on? Did he promise and change his mind? What's going on? What if he got really confused and frustrated and angry and discouraged and all that kind of stuff? God's like, no, I fully accept you. I love you. And I will make you king when it's the right time, but not yet. Right now, I need you to be a faithful shepherd. Right now, I need you to be a faithful armor bearer. Right now, I need you to be a faithful, whatever it is, different things. And so that's not rejection, that's protection, because he loves us so much. So again, back to rejection. I want to end with this, is that life is amazing when we're not scared of being rejected. Once we have that confidence that someone's not going to reject us, right? Even in a natural relationship, when you know someone's not going to reject you, it just is so liberating. Where you're like, man, I can be myself. I can bless this person, right? It's awesome when you know, if I say I love you to this person, they're going to be thrilled. I like my kids, it's like when they first started saying I love you on their own, and it's like, that's amazing. But see, they never said it with fear that I might reject them or be like, what? It's like they knew if they said, I love you to me, that I'd be thrilled and I'd throw them in the air and hug them and tell them how much I love them too. And it's amazing when we have this fearlessness because it's like, I'm not going to be rejected. And that's what God wants to have with us. I mean, ideally, we also have other relationships with other people where we have that. But especially with God, it's amazing when there's no fear of rejection. And so we're like, this person loves me and accepts me. And if I bless them, they'll be thrilled. And I also know that they are looking for ways to bless me also. And that's the thing, is that God is constantly telling us how much he loves us. Question is, are we willing to hear him? If we aren't looking for that, if we aren't listening for that, we might miss out on some of these things. Right, and one of the cool things about being in love is that when someone you care about loves you back, you're like, I don't care what other people think. Right? I don't care if other people reject me because this person loves me. That's all I care about. Right? Romans 8:31 says, if God is for us, who can be against us? And flip that around to the love. If God loves me, who cares if someone else doesn't love me? Right? It's so amazing. And so again, there's this fearlessness of knowing we won't be rejected, where it can take our relationship with God to a whole new level. And so I hope this is helpful. Again, God is just absolutely amazing toward us. And I want to remind you again before we end for today, is this free giveaway is goodwill toward men. Part of the war is over. It's our free giveaway. You can go to charisdailygtn.com and get this for free. Again, our whole situation's different, and it's absolutely amazing. And so it's so powerful to know what our situation is and how God thinks about us and what God's done for us. And so I hope this has been a blessing to you, and we'll see you next time. Have a good day.